Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you for recognizing me as I join this debate on this miscellaneous provisions, Registrar General Companies, Registration of Bills, Names and Non-Profit Organizations, Act of 2023. Madam Speaker, I too will be as brief as my colleagues who spoke before me, and I will do my very best to stay on the straight and narrow so you don't have to rise unnecessarily for any admonishment, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to speak on this bill from the eyes of a non-legal person. My colleagues, all of them who spoke before, would have given an angle from legal perspective, all being attorneys at law. I will attempt to speak on behalf of the people of Mayaro, who I represent, who are, many of them not attorneys, not in a legal frame, but they may be small businessmen, farmers, young entrepreneurs, people wanting to get involved in business. And there is a uniqueness about the Mayaro constituency where we do have a mix of people who have access to technology. Those who don't have access, the penetration is not as wide as much as the country. But then you have a huge middle and older category of folks who may not be too technology savvy. And what does this bill mean to them? And what are some of the challenges that they may face? So, Madam Speaker, I must say that this bill coming through the Senate, having attempted to read a lot of the amendments that was made in the Senate, I am quite sure that the legislation would have been interrogated in its fullness, and that those in the upper house would have done a reasonably good job to bring a bill before us today that we all can lend some support to, taking into consideration the importance of what we're doing with this particular piece of bill. Definitely this measure here before us, it really reaches way beyond the issue of just implementation of a paperless system in the Registrar General's office. But it will result in a transformation in the manner in which all official business documents are constructed within the government system. Now, this is inevitable, and I would say it's quite welcoming in this modern digital age. Now, two things that I must also put on the record. I have been using the cross system for a bit of time as well, and I must say it has worked very good. It's pretty efficient compared to the old system from a business perspective. I have seen some of the interaction, the electronic interaction, which was also very welcome. And I do hope in the back end of the system that there can be red flagging to ensure that we set key performance indices to make sure that we reach out to queries and concerns when these arise, when queries are made, because I think that is the stumbling block in government service, when you don't get feedback when you make queries. So I'm trusting that, like all modern day help desk type systems, that they are key triggers to make sure that responses are done in a timely fashion. So I also acknowledge the fact that this is a good step in terms of the ease of doing business as well. I do know for the last 8 years, as someone who has been championing matters on small business and trade and so on, this has been a huge challenge for the country in terms of how do we make doing business a lot easier in Trinidad and Tobago. And this one particular item, there are many others that still need to be attended to by the government, but this one particular item today in terms of cross and the Registrar General's office, I think we can, give kudos where it is due in terms of the work that has been done with this particular application. And today, I also realize that this piece of legislation is critical to our compliance recommendation for the international compliance for EU and FATF and so on. So I think the bill today that has come before us deserves the type of support, because I say it is important for the Republic in terms of building our country and allowing us to operate more efficiently and competitively on the international market. But, Madam Speaker, adopting electronic systems really signifies the adoption of this modern technology, and it impacts small organizations with limited budgets as well, because they have to do some pre-work in the background. Those who can't do it themselves, they may have to bring on experts persons who you have to buy services from them as well. It brings another layer of cost for small businesses, but I think that is something that, we will have to work on in terms of how do we get our small businesses up to standard, training and so on, but we'll talk about that very, very quickly. One of the things that I think is going to be important for us to accept is the concerns regarding the security and the integrity of the electronic systems. Particularly those will be managed by the Registrar General. We have had in the recent years, mentioned by the member for Sawa Barataria and my honorable colleague from Lopino Bones, the issue of the cyber breaches and so on. We in the IT industry, I understand, I must say, how these things happen. I think I am a strong proponent for public awareness in terms of how do we train people to act and behave digitally as part of the process to ensure that we can reduce the issues of cyber attacks and so on. But that is going to be a key concern for the non-technical people, because when you tell them, look, you're giving yourself and your trust to this electronic system, then that becomes, we're not a very trusting society in Trinidad and Tobago. And when we hand over this to an electronic system, it brings some queries, in the back of their minds. I think, and I trust in the Attorney General's wrap-up, he will give us the assurance that, the protection of sensitive data, giving this reassurance to the public regarding data privacy. I know we do have some data privacy laws and so on, and it's a matter of instilling the confidence in the constituents, in the public, that this is a good thing that we're on here. There is also need, I believe, and I spoke about this, about tailoring some type of specific support for those small businesses and NGOs and NPOs and so on that really lacks in the computer literacy part of it. I do know we have several programs in place. We must try and get them encouraged to get on board, get digital savvy, because this is the way of the world. We don't want anybody left behind. On the issue of guidance on beneficial ownership and accountability, I think that is very, very important in terms of being able to have this assurance of trust in the system for compliance. Madam Speaker, I just want to give a couple issues and some suggestions, and I hope that the Attorney General can probably speak to some of it. Perhaps some of it is inside the legislation that it will be addressed as we start to effect it, and perhaps it may be being addressed. So first of all, Madam Speaker, accessibility and capacity is one concern that I would have. Small organizations and individuals, particularly those with limited financial resources, may struggle to adapt to the electronic systems due to the lack of literacy and access to technology, as I mentioned. So I would like to suggest that we implement some sort of tailored support programs aimed at assisting these small businesses, NGOs, and micro entities in navigating around these electronic systems. Madam Speaker, this could involve providing some training workshops, access to technical assistance, and resources to address the digital literacy gaps that we may find more so in the rural communities in Trinidad and Tobago. Additionally, consider establishing some outreach initiatives. I know, the government at times, they carry these mobile buses all over the country. Perhaps that may be a good way to really promote what the Registrar General Office is doing for small businesses in rural communities. I would probably ask the Attorney General to look at that at some point in time during the year, because we have to catch a bunch of people who are not very tech savvy and who may not have access to the internet services in the communities that they operate. Madam Speaker, on the point of data security and privacy, again, concerns would arise regarding the vulnerability of the electronic records, cyber threats and breaches, potentially compromising confidentiality and the integrity of sensitive information. So my suggestion, Madam Speaker, enforce stringent security protocols such as encryption measures, which are the highest level, and regular security audits to safeguard electronic records from unauthorized access and cyber attacks. Now, without going too heavily into what technology is outside there, but there are blockchain type systems. I don't know what is the back end that the government would have put into the Registrar General office, but if that is something that is in place, I feel more confident about the safety and the security of the data that is being housed at the Registrar General's office. We must also, via the legislation, I think I heard the Honourable Member for Sawa Barataria speak about the requirements of the people who work inside the Registrar General office to be able to make commitments of security and privacy, or they may face penalties at the end of the day. So we must insist that the Registrar General office remain accountable for implementing these data measures, establish clear protocols, and they must respond to every security incident whenever it happens. Additionally, prioritize data privacy by ensuring compliance with the relevant data protection legislation, and obviously the transparency regarding the handling of the data. And I think that is very, very important. The handling of the data would create some space for malfeasance or some sort of challenge that you would have in terms of holding the integrity of the data that is being there. Madam Speaker, I just want to talk quickly on the issue of beneficial ownership and accountability, which was raised. Questions regarding the Registrar General's Department capacity to effectively verify beneficial ownership. Because I am submitting data. I know there is some issues around that an attorney who is doing this for you, he's held to a higher standard and he can't knowingly submit wrong or bogus information because he has, I guess, a responsibility for honesty at the end of the day. But we know sometimes that doesn't work all too well. So, Madam Speaker, I'm suggesting that the Attorney General look at perhaps allocating resources that can enhance the Registrar General's investigative capabilities to verify beneficial ownership and to detect these fraudulent activities. We know it happens. We know it happens in the best of systems. Taking into consideration how important beneficial ownership is in terms of cracking down on fraud, transnational organized crime, money laundering, I think perhaps the Attorney General may ought to look and see what type of resources, in the limited resources that we have, how we can bolster that at the end of the day. I see the Attorney General also, he can look at, Honourable Member can look at implementing mechanisms for auditing and monitoring this compliance with regards to beneficial ownership regulations. And perhaps if it is not in place, establish clear guidelines for holding those accountable to be found to be in violation of the reporting requirements, Madam Speaker. Additionally, the Attorney General can consider providing incentives. Just another curious slant to this, providing some incentives for voluntary disclosure of beneficial ownership information to encourage compliance and transparency, because we want the best system possible to take us into the future. Madam Speaker, training and support. Adequate training and support for staff is essential to ensure the effective implementation and utilization of these electronic systems within the Registrar General's Department. I would hope to see that some development can be done with regards to comprehensive training and get some programs that would be tailored to the specific need of staff members, covering topics such as system navigation, data management, and obviously digital behavior, because we do have a lot of persons in our public service who are on the upper end who may not be too tech savvy, and getting everybody on board on the same page will be critical to the success of the organization and success of the country as well. Madam Speaker, as we go quickly, public education and assistance. I am a proponent for public education in every aspect of our digital transformation in this country, more so in terms of our digital behavior in your home, in the workspace and so on, because all of these will help combat the frequency of cyber attacks and so on, and you being able to get caught inside there with your passwords being open and so on. So that public education assistance, I do believe that extensive public education campaign will be needed to raise awareness and promote the work of this new Registrar General's office in this digital framework. Let's go outside there and let's tell our small business, our business community that this is being done, this is how you access it now, and this is how you get access to ease of getting whatever you want at the end of the day. So we can develop targeted educational materials and resources to inform all these stakeholders, which will be all our small businesses and so on, about the benefits of using this system, of getting access and understanding exactly how it should work. How do we do this, Madam Speaker? Utilize all the communication channels, including things like workshops, webinars, printed material, and try our best to reach as much diverse audience as we possibly can. And obviously during this transition period, now my experience with Cross has been good because I have a good IT background, I understand the system, so it has been very, very smooth and welcoming. But there will be people who will have some challenges, and perhaps this is where the help desks and online tutorials would assist them going forward. Most importantly, again, Madam Speaker, establish mechanisms for feedback. And again, I think this is where we run aground in the public service from time to time. When we make queries, you don't get feedback, and you have to be running more so from Mayaro to Port of Spain or from Rio Claro to Port of Spain on a regular basis to get a query done. So the feedback would be important, more so to promote the Registrar General's office and making sure that we give the public feedback for queries and so on as we implement this further. So, Madam Speaker, as promised, in being very, very brief, the adoption of this electronic system really represents a really pivotal step in modernization, even for small organizations. But it will come with its challenges, including concerns on security, data integrity, and more so the accessibility for all sectors of Trinidad and Tobago. Addressing these challenges would require a concerted effort from government agencies, such as the Registrar General's office, to implement all these requirements as they go forward, providing accountability and adequate support and education to users. Madam Speaker, I do believe by prioritizing these efforts, we can harness the benefits of digital transformation while safeguarding the interests and privacy of all our stakeholders in our society. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for San Fernando West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.